Stasa23 here. In today's knife therapy, I have for you the Kizer Drop Bear. This knife comes in at $119 and it features their new clutch lock. Basically, it's their iteration of axis style lock or bar lock, whatever you want to call it. And we will talk about that in just a second. Let's get some specs out of the way so you can have an idea of the size of the knife. You have a total length of 7.15 inches, a blade length of 3 inches, a grip area from here to back here of 3.47 inches, handle scale thickness from here to here of 0.49 inches, close width in the pocket from here to here of 1.22 inches, and a blade stock thickness of 0.109 inches, pretty much the same as a Benchmade bug out. And the behind the edge thickness on my particular sample is coming in at around 20,000, sharpened at 20 degrees per side. The Drop Bear came in two different variations so far, with the satin blade, gray aluminum, and black hardware and thumb studs. Or you could also get it in a blacked out version with purple thumb studs and a black aluminum. It's kind of hard. It's a lighter, like charcoal color gray there. But that's the two variations that they've dropped as far as my knowledge. And I see this knife as an answer to, you know, kind of like you had Civivi with the Elementum, and you have Benchmade with the bug out. I kind of see this as their flagship style knife. You know, definitely different than both of those by a good bit, but we're going to dive in and we're going to see what you think about this one. You have this nice versatile drop point, or I guess you could call it a spear point, because it is the point is in line with the pivot and the sides are the same. So to me, it's a spear point, but we call it a drop point. You got a nice belt satin finish on here, even though I would have loved to see a good stonewash finish on it, because they do a really good job with their stonewash. You have a top swedge that tapers down all the way to the tip. However, you still have a pretty robust tip there for doing, you know, if you want to bore into some wood or something like that, you should be just fine. You have a nice long row of jimping if that's your thing. It is fine cut jimping and it offers some traction, but my thumb still slides on it fairly easily, but not something I really care about. You do have a sharpening notch cut in right here that should give you some sharpening light before it starts to widen up in the back. It's always nice to see. One thing that I would have loved to see, this is a high flat grind. I would have loved to see a nice deep hollow grind like they did on the Kizer Mini Roach. That's the only thing I think that would make this thing, you know, even that much better. So why don't we test this knife and see how well this flat grind cuts. The knife came nice and sharp from Kizer, and it's slicing fairly well. Of course, once again, I would have loved to see this with a deep hollow grind like on the Mini Roach. That knife just performed on next level. This one does just fine, like I said, and it's not a slouch, but it's a flat grind coming down to around 20,000. So now on to the Pine 2x4, where we're going to test the ergos and see how well this edge is still biting. Right away, I kind of wanted to increase that pressure. I want to see how it was going to feel in hand, and I noticed that when I was in the hammer grip, I felt the most locked in. I was really being able to put a lot of pressure into it. The handle was very, very comfortable throughout all the wood shaving, and I was very impressed. Now we move on to the 1/2 inch twisted sisal rope. The blade was just the right amount of belly to make these cuts on the flat surface easy and enjoyable. And the knife had a good bit of bite. I'm doing mainly push cuts here, not having to exert a whole bunch of force. And yeah, it felt really locked in the pinch grip. And I ended up making 40 cuts. 154 cm. I think that's good, and I only stopped there because, like I said, we have more cutting to do after this. but the edge still felt really good after the 40th cut, and I'm sure I could have made more. Really liked how I could get my finger far up on by that tip doing those drag cuts. That's what's great about having that low tip below or at the pivot, in line with the pivot. And yeah, the knife was pretty slicey, handled everything fairly well, and I didn't see any major problems that it was running into. It was, like I said, still sharp where it's popping this stuff and not dragging through it. It went really well through both of the tubing. This one, is a little bit usually, hard for some flat grinds, but no problem whatsoever. And going through here, the edge is still going strong. Now I went a little overboard with this roll of denim right here. Once again, it's got all the pockets in it, all the seams, and I was kind of worried because the blade is not that long, 3 inches, and once you're putting pressure down, it's going a little bit past there. But it did just fine, no problems whatsoever. Edge still feeling pretty good, and I had a good working edge at the end. Alrighty, I hope y'all enjoyed that cutting footage I enjoyed making for y'all. Why don't we check out the deployment and action of the knife? Being that you have this bar style lock, you're not having any extra friction on the blade once that lock is disengaged, and this is riding on ceramic ball bearings. And yeah, I mean, just effort. There's nothing holding that blade once you pull that lock out of the way. And right now, I'll pop up on the screen the inside so you can take a look at this clutch lock system. The knife comes to you with Omega springs in there, and then you have 2 other Omega springs that come along in the box. The ones that are in the knife are much weaker tension, to where you can pretty easily flip it out. I mean, I'm not worried about it coming open in my pocket. I mean, it stays in there. It does suck it back in. But if you're somebody who likes a little bit extra tension, you can swap out to the thicker springs, and you will get a little bit more tension when you're opening and closing. And that way it might be a little snappier, but with the bearings, I find it comes out just fine. This is a very fidgety knife. I mean, all axis locks are pretty fidgety, or you can just grab the bar and sling it out like that if you want to really, drive somebody nuts. But you can easily reverse flick it. The thumb studs are comfortable. They are removable. And the release on the axis lock, clutch lock, is nice and comfortable as well. Does have some texture just like on the thumb studs, so it gives you some nice grip there. So now let's check out the scales. You have all black hardware, black bar lock, and black hardware in the back right here. T8 hardware throughout. You have aluminum scales with a gray hard anodizing on it. Nice and softened edges on the shadow boxed scales. The liners are sticking out some. However, they are nice and rounded, so they are not uncomfortable. Like I've heard people say, they're not uncomfortable when you're actually using the knife, or at least I haven't found it. The only time I ever see those to be a problem was whenever they have hard edges right there when you're squeezing it. But Kizer does a really good job of rounding over the corners right here, so everything's nice and comfortable in hand. Your pocket clip is deep carry, tip up, left or right handed, and let's check it out in the pocket real quick. The knife carries nice in the pocket, pretty much disappears, and it'll stay along the side of your jeans, shorts, whatever you want to use. I mean, whatever you're carrying it in, and it has good retention. The aluminum has kind of like that chalky feeling, but not terrible, just good enough so where it's not slippery. I like that, and it does a good job of holding it into the pocket. Now let's talk about the lock real quick. If you've ever owned a Benchmade or anything else with the bar style lock, say like a Hogue or something, you know that these are very strong locking mechanisms. You pretty much have to shear that hopefully hardened bar right there before the lock's going to fail. And Benchmades have been tested for many years now, and they're very, very strong locks. This one has absolutely no play left or right. Now, I can muscle some up and down, but that's pretty common with an axis lock because that bar is just kind of like wiggling on there a little bit. Nothing to be afraid of. I've spine whacked this thing and it did not close on me, so nothing to be worried about. You can see right there where it's engaging. So you have full engagement on there. And then it looks like there's some more room just for wear. When this thing starts to wear more, this thing will push that way even more. Your stainless steel liners have been heavily skeletonized. Look at that, boy, on the bottom and on the top. And then you don't have any backspacer to add extra weight. Flow through construction, so if you want to blow this out, clean it out with a Q-tip, whatever you want to do, nicely done there. You have a huge lanyard hole for putting a baby's arm through there. I'm just kidding. Now let's check it out on the scale. First off, in grams, 104.7 grams and 3.693 ounces. That is a-okay for me. I had no issues with it in the pocket. On for some quick size comparisons, you have the Benchmade Bug Out and the Civivi Elementum. The Elementum is very similar in overall length. You have a little bit more cutting edge on the Drop Bear than the Elementum, and you have a little bit more grip area because you don't have that flipper tab. Next up, we have the Ontario Rat Model 1 and 2. It's about the same length as the Rat Model 2. You get more cutting edge on the Drop Bear, and of course the one's dwarfing it. Lastly, we have the Spyderco Para 3 and the Hogue Ritter Mini RSK. It's almost identical in dimensions to the Mini RSK. The Para 3 is a little bit longer, not by much, but you definitely get more cutting edge on the Drop Bear than the Para 3, about the same on the Mini Hogue Mini RSK. All right, now for nitpicks and complaints. Like I said earlier, I would have loved to see this in hollow grind. I think it would have been awesome with a hollow grind. And hopefully we see them do some with micarta scales. That would be excellent. And I would also love to see it in a nice stone wash finish. But other than that, it's not that big of a deal. I'm very glad to see that they, are trying to innovate on, things that are already good and, come out with something even brand new would be nice. But Kizer's been killing it. The overall value of the knife at $119, I think it's definitely worth it. This is their first bar style lock, and they added to it. They do an excellent job with their 154 CM steel. The action on these are amazing, fidgety. The weight on them's good, comfortable in hand. I just think it's a solid user knife. Definitely hope they do an XL version of this down the road, and I'm sure they will. So there you go. That is the Kizer Drop Bear. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them down below. I hope everybody's having an absolute amazing day, and I will see y'all on the next one. Peace.